All right, Crushing Iron Podcast 750.
750. It's February 20th, the year. It's 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast. And as he said, this is episode 750.
Yeah, I thought I'd bring that up early because that's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I guess it is. Yeah, we're three-fourths the way there. Three-fourths the way to retirement before we do our spinoff show.
Yeah.
Once a quarter.
Retirement. I mean, I got to join the neighbors soon.
Yes, you do. And
I've been
it's going to take me at least 250 episodes to groom my replacement, Nick, who is going to come in and finish things off after episode 1000. So we got to figure out who your replacement's going to be, or maybe you'll keep going and maybe I'll send off and Nick can come in and be the new guy. And for all the Nicks out there, keep doing what you're doing. No,
I'll just keep
it's a beautiful
Bob Babbitt. I'm going to go Bob Babbitt's route. I'm just going to start flying to Kona and setting up a booth.
Yeah, and pushing your book.
And interviewing.
That was Mike Riley's book. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Mike Riley. No, I'm going to start interviewing 40th place pro. So. I'm going to be the... Yeah.
Well, that's what you got to do. If your podcast is based on interviews, at some point, that's what you got to do because you're going to run out of people. There's just that's got to be so stressful. And I got to give a lot of credit to the podcasters out there that only do interviews because that would stress me the fuck out.
Yeah.
Having to line up all these people and going through managers and times and only doing it on their time and when they're of them. That's like we've had God knows how many. People, authors of books and managers and athletes reach out. Hey, we love your podcast. And it's just funny because you can always tell, right? They send you an email and the main body of the email is a different color. Like they don't catch that because I don't think you can see it when you do because it's total copy and paste job.
Oh yeah,
and they're totally inauthentic and like, yeah, we'd love to be on. And you're like, yeah, there's a few we've entertained before. And my gosh, like, well, he's only available, Wednesdays and Fridays from 7 to 9 p.m. Pass. No thanks. That's just so much. One, it's like way past my bedtime, but two, that's just not like in the flow of what we have. So it's crazy to not to think about the added stress that, and I'm sure they make a lot more money doing, guest appearances and sponsorships and ads and stuff than we do. But man, it sure is nice to just be able to do our podcast whenever we can or not do it and not have to answer to anybody except for each other. And if we want to start 10 minutes late, we can start 10 minutes late. We want to push it the next day, we push it to the next day. So there's a lot to be said about not having expectations and adding stress to completing a task that you should love.
I see what you did there.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, man, I know you're in the news business for 20 years, but there are a few things you've rubbed off on me in the last 7 or 8 years. I can do a little bit of a teaser, but that's definitely a tease for the title today, or for the topic. It's your first time tuning in today. Welcome. We appreciate you giving us your time. We know you have quite a lot of options in the triathlon podcast universe and just podcasts in general in terms of vibes. We appreciate you tuning in today. We cover it all. We do swim, bike, and run specific podcasts. We do race recaps and also a lot of race previews. But for the most part, Mike and I as coaches, athletes, best friends, we just sit back, relax, have an open, honest discussion about what we're going through in life, and not just as human beings, but also as coaches and athletes ourselves. Mike and I also talk frequently, but what about our own athletes going through? He and I work with a wide range of athletes all across the globe, from beginner level athletes in the very first 5K or sprint triathlon, all the way up through elite little amateurs trying to get back toward championships and everyone in between from all over the globe. We'll use the feedback loop we have with them and training peaks, emails, text messages, and the like to drive the discussion of the day. We also like to utilize our Facebook group. You can search that, Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question with my correct name, and we'll let you right in. It's a fantastic community, solid space to get information, and a sport that is oftentimes way overcomplicated and way too confusing. You get great answers in there. You have seasoned veterans and Ironman age group champions all the way down to beginners. A lot of awesome people in there. So be a part of that community. Don't be a lurker. Be a participant. And we'll go in there about once a month or every 3 to 6 weeks, do a Q&A, take the pulse of the community, answer as many questions as we possibly can. That is it. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We do have an agenda, and we're open about it. And that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Yeah, man. When you're teasing there, I kind of phrase came to my head. It's actually a Fleetwood Mac song. You Can Go Your Own Way. You know that one? Classic song.
I do.
Yeah, it was on. I think it was on Rumors, which is
song.
Hmm?
It's such a great song.
Oh, it's an unbelievable song. But that album Rumors that's like my favorite story of how that was recorded. There was 2 women and 2 men in the band. They were both dating, but they had just broke up. They rented a big lodge to record the album at, and they all sat in their own rooms and wrote like hate songs about each other. And then they came out and sang them, and it turned into one of the greatest selling albums of all times.
That's nuts.
Yeah. It's a pretty cool documentary. But anyway, yeah, we were talking about beforehand, like it's getting to be that itchy to race season, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And now what? How do you handle that, man? You getting a little excited? What about you?
Me, no. I wish Ironman Texas was in June. I've got my flow going. Finally, I bounced back really great from run camp and got into probably my best post camp training week I've ever had. I was back on the bike yesterday. I was back in the pool already this morning before they had to just a small bend. Why did we need to empty the whole pool for Aqua Aerobics? The whole pool. Every lane line pulled out, all 6, for an entire pool to be taken up by aqua jogging for an hour and a half for a grand total of 14 people. Small bins. If you're at the J and you're listening, small little comment box.
As we know, Aqua Joggers rule the world, man.
They really do.
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
Oh, it is. They control the time they want to warm up. They control when you get out of the water. They control the temperature for sure. I mean, I thought I got a tan swimming today. That's how hot it was.
It was hours of the health club.
Yeah, everything. Exactly. I think, but then I was like, you know what? It's probably good heat training for Texas. But no, my training is going fine. But we were talking before the podcast about a different topic in a podcast you listen to, and it's people start off the year and they're jonesing to do great things, and then as long as they keep doing those. We're almost, February is almost done, so we're almost the 6th through the year, done, finished. And now not only are races starting to get closer, but now you see other people racing, right? So you got, I think, one of the big T100 or whatever you want to call the new PTO series races coming up in 2 weeks. So race from me televised. You got Puerto Rico. Oceanside feels like it's right around the corner. Same with Texas 70.3. Same with my race in Ironman Texas, unfortunately. But it is like, and one of the things, like when you were talking earlier about, about the podcast you listened to about the MMA fighters and boxing and being engaged, and that led us to more of a conversation about, stacking days on days on days on days. And when you're looking at, I mean, if you got, I think it goes on both ends of the spectrum, right? You got a guy like me who admittedly blew behind the 8 ball when it comes to like when I should have probably started to like dive in deep, but haven't and didn't. And now I am. And then there's this same temptation, I think, with athletes who have been training consistently in January, February with races that aren't soon, right? But you got buddies that are racing. You're just ready to show some fitness. And so you get this temptation in the workout to do more and do better and go harder, regardless of what's going to do to you. And that's kind of like, a thought that crosses my mind. Not a lot. Just I've been doing the sport for a long time, and I don't care about that kind of stuff. I know that the best way towards getting as fit as possible is to stack sessions and to stack days and to stack weeks. That's the only way, right? So if I go out and try to be a hero this weekend and do a big workout to see where I'm at, I'm probably not going to be able to do much, if anything, that's good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So right now for me, I've got like I got 9 weeks. And so I've kind of like split out my training cycle into like preparation and then race focus. And then my prep block is more about getting in as many sessions as much as possible, all easy with frequency. Because to me, that's the same. But even swimming, like it's short stuff. And then as I get closer to race, go longer, because I know that I can stack those sessions. And I haven't done an Ironman in what feels like forever. And so like the long rides and especially the long rides seem kind of daunting already. I've already kind of convinced myself and had like my own kind of one-on-one conversations. Like, listen, you're probably going to cap out at 4
Trainer.
4 hours, yeah, which is like the Mike Terrali method.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to top off at a 4-hour ride. But if I can get in a 4-hour long ride, a couple 4-hour long rides with some intensity, and then a couple like maybe 2-hour rides during the week, that's the name of the game. Because I was looking at my weekly volume from last week. I think I got in 8 hours of cycling, which is pretty good. For getting back in the swing of things. I hopped back on the bike yesterday. My only real limiter on the bike right now is my ass. It's just not, it is not an Ironman shape, but it is like there's a tendency to you want to go harder and do more because you think you're behind. But to me, whether you feel like you're ahead or you feel like you're behind, the answer is not almost, but it's rarely never going harder and having expectations. And I know we talk about this a lot, and I talked about it a little bit as you were talking earlier. And actually, as I was doing the intro, I got to thinking about this text I got yesterday. We talked a lot about this run program we're having a lot of our team do. It's starting in November. You basically do a 5K test, you get your 5K pace, and you get a 5K heart rate. And then for the next 8 to 16 weeks, you do 6 runs a week of varying intensities based on your pace, varying distances with 3 recoveries, super chill runs, 2 easy runs that eventually bridge into more like tempo work, and then a long run. And that's it. Very simple, just about being consistent. And I had an athlete. We had some results this weekend from our kind of first batch where they're outstanding. The average 5K improvement was like 155, which is insane. And then average heart rate was lower. It was just really great results. And maybe eventually at some point, if we have the time, we'll offer that to the community at large. But I had an athlete that sent me a text that he said, I forgot to tell you. I'm just going to read verbatim what the text said, because I think it goes right into our topic for today. So he said, I forgot to tell you in my notes for the 5K retest that when I started this 16 weeks ago, my wife started this and asked if she could do it with me, and she is not a runner, quote unquote, right? Mm-hmm. And she rides her bike a few days a week, but that's it. But he said, listen, if you're going to follow the protocol to a T, you can do it. And you got to do it. You got to stick to it. And so, she followed it to a T and did it exactly as I did it. The first 5K was so difficult for her, and she wasn't sure what she got herself into. But by the end of the program, she said, I am a runner. And I can't tell you how proud I am of her. She worked out when she was younger, like when we were in our 20s, and ran a few 5K races from there. But her follow-up 5K was her fastest 5K in her life. October 29th 5K was 44:26. February 18th, 36:04. So she took 8 minutes off her time in a 5K over 12 weeks, 16 weeks, which is, to me, unreal. But the biggest thing, 2 things that you get from it. One, now you think you're running, but to me, the biggest win there is the proof that we've said this on, I don't know how many podcasts we have so many about, run slow to get fast podcasts out there. Because to me, running is the greatest example of all of people who ruin their week of training by overrunning, because it is the most demanding. It's the most damage to your body. It's the most stress. It's the harder to recover from. It's the one where athletes get the most injuries from, is running. And most people will tell you, and you and I have had this conversation so many times off air. A new athlete comes in, I'm just not a runner. Almost always the answer is, that's because you're running too fast, and you can't breathe. If you can't breathe, you can't run. And it's exhausting, right? And you feel like and why would you want to do that anymore, right? When you're walking out the door on a scale of 1 to 10, you're already doing a 9. Why? No, I wouldn't want to do that either. It'd be like asking, your friend to ride, 2 times 20 at threshold 6 days a week. No thanks. I might last 2 or 3 days, but I'm going to be burnt to a crisp. My legs are going to be fried, and I can't do it, and I don't want to do it anymore. And I'm not seeing any gains. So why am I doing this? That's why running is, again, such a great example in that you can get so much better by just doing more of it and doing it easy and accumulating more volume and accumulating more stress and accumulating more time and accumulating more mileage. Doing that allows you to do more, right? But then as soon as it happens, you go out and you want to be a hero on the track or on the road, and you run too fast, or you run with a buddy who's fast, and you don't want to go back into your own pace. guess what happens? You're smashed for 2 or 3 days. So you lose time. And I think it's just a perfect example of what we talk about with training, wanting to race, getting the itch to race, but then remembering what the point of training is to stack volume on top of each other. And the beauty of it is that you don't even know how fit you really are, because as one of our podcast titles is fatigue masks fitness. So if you're working out consistently, you're working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, right? And you go out and you have these sessions that you consider really, really, really good, you're even better than that, right? You don't want to fully unmask that to a race day, and I think that's the catch, and that's the trap that I think a lot of athletes fall into this time of year is they want to go out and test themselves. And this is why you see a lot of injuries and niggles pop up this time of year, is because people are building, you shouldn't be building an enormous amount of fatigue. You should be building appropriate fatigue, right? Via appropriate load management and a objective and what I would consider a careful ramp rate in terms of percentage of mileage and intensity each week. And what happens is you're building this consistently, like you're working out 5, 6, 7 days a week, multiple sessions a day. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, you're like, yeah, I just want to rip it today. But you go out and you do it on fatigued legs. Like you're not going to hold form well. Your body's going to break down. So you're digging a hole, right, with a really small shovel. And then you get hurt and you get injured, right? If you're going to do it for a race and at least taper well and then see what you have. But again, that's I think one of the biggest pitfalls you see this time of year is people get too antsy, they get too impatient, and in my opinion, all you really need to remember is okay, well, why do I feel so fit today? Oh, because I haven't missed a session in 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, because I've been feeling really, really good. Oh, because I haven't gone overboard. But it's like, people forget what got them there, and then all they think about is the moment of what's going to fulfill their ego or match their expectation for the day, or just they get super impatient. They just want to see something when a lot of times that's just a recipe for regression.
Yeah, the podcast I was listening to, it was they were talking about MMA fighters and boxers and how the new trend is to when they spar, which has always been a pretty violent training session, but now when they're sparring, the new thing is to just play with it. So they don't even really hit each other. They just kind of go through the motions, but they stop their punch before it hits the other guy, or kicks or whatever it is. And the reason they're doing that is twofold. One is that when they're going, at that pace and they're not stressed about getting clocked in the head all day, they can work on their form a lot better and their footwork, and they can focus and actually get better at what they're doing and work on combinations and things like that without having to worry about just getting hit in return. And secondly, obviously, it's recovery and longevity. They kind of started realizing this. Like, I think these guys would just go super intense and just have all out brawls during sparring and training and everything like that. And it would just shorten their careers by, years. And I kept thinking about that. It's like, wow, that really makes sense and is applicable to triathlon, because I think about, but so it's like, what does that mean? What does play mean? And I think about it in terms of like zone 1 and zone 2. And, you're just talking about that run program, for example. And I think, I had some really good success with some people too, but some of them just couldn't hang. And I think it all boils back to what you're saying. I mean, that's a lot 6 days a week is a pretty consistent volume of running. And if you're not going to be able to hold back, and like you said, the reason that kind of stuff usually falls apart is because it's too intense, or they string runs out longer than they should, or whatever the case may be. So I really think about what play means to me whenever I've really found kind of a groove with going out. I have my run stuff on, and I go out, and I always start with a run walk now, because it just feels accessible to me no matter what I'm doing or how I feel. I just start with a run walk for the first mile or two, even sometimes even longer. But invariably, I'll pick it up in that second mile or third mile and just kind of find a groove. That's the one good thing about it to me, is I can really, in my run segments that are shorter, and then I have a little walk between them or whatever, I can really find a good form and like a balance in there. And it's almost like it warms me up perfectly. And then I can just kind of slink right into the groove. And, I was thinking about that. I was talking to one of my athletes about Ironman yesterday maybe. And I was telling him, man, it's like the amazing ability of us, like during a workout and even like, from run camp, there were certain sections when I had to just chill for a while, but it kind of gave me another level of energy. It's sort of this in-race recovery kind of thing, or in-workout recovery kind of principle. And I was thinking about how, a lot of times I get off the bike and I'm absolutely demolished, But then I'm like, okay, well, I got to go run this marathon. So I just go out and I start on absolutely fried legs, just start getting into it. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what if I just walk like the first mile or something and let my body kind of just come around and eat and, fuel really well. And I wonder what would happen. I've one of my first Ironman, this guy he'd done like, at the time it was my second, and I think he had done like 20 or something, one of those guys. And he told me he always walks the first mile of a marathon just because of that type of reason, which I found really interesting. I mean, it's just like, man, you talk about patience. So you know how it feels when you get off that bike. You feel like no matter how you feel, you just got to go out and shred that marathon. But I don't know. It's interesting to think about the concept of play within training. And I think it's like, if you can kind of associate it with zone 1 and zone 2, where like, because a lot of people get bored with that, right? You always hear that. I just want some more action, or it's hard for me to stay in zone 2. But maybe if you looked at them as something like figure out some kind of creative way to make it more interesting and fun, and then like think of it sort of as a learning session and how you can really work on your pacing and then stop for a second or whatever and dial it back and really think about what you're doing. That sounds kind of intriguing to me, actually.
It's one of the greatest mysteries of being a coach is the amount of time you have to explain the benefits of aerobic conditioning and accumulating session after session after session, and the role that consistency plays in your ultimate success as an athlete. I mean, I even know for you specifically, and I'm obviously you'll remember this too, but I think the best swim shape you've ever been in, I can't remember what race it was, but I think it's when you committed doing like 5 days a week or almost every day. You didn't do a ton, but you just got in the water every day for weeks on weeks on weeks. It wasn't a huge session, which I know
it was Louisville.
Yeah, that's right.
It was my
Louisville.
first full non-wetsuit swim. I was I was like, I got to get really comfortable in the water here.
Yeah, because there's two things that that's always wrecked you. The super long swim and the overrun, right? When you go out, and I think it's for everybody, right? You go out and you just feel like, I got it today, and the weather gets you, and then all of a sudden it just wrecks you for days. So if you think about that in like a 5-day block, and you think that you only work out once, you're losing fitness. And maybe don't go that dramatic, but you're losing the opportunity to gain fitness by doing that. Same thing goes for, if a super long swim and you're going too hard, which again is like something I try to drive into the athletes we work with, and something I talked about maybe for the first time ever a few months ago about how I think so many long course athletes in 70.3s and fulls ruin their entire race by swimming zone 3 or zone 4 the entire swim, because they're either one, so undertrained in the swim, or two, over swim. The same thing goes in training. If you're over swimming, you're swimming way too hard and way too often, it's going to smash you. I mean, I think everyone would agree, like you're hungry for a reason, right? You're banned from Costco for a reason post swim, because you would go through every aisle and drop 1,000 because you're so hungry, right? And you're so exhausted. Right. And then what that leads to is, we talked about it, months and months ago about, when you do those things, or from a fueling standpoint, you make bad decisions. That also leads to training bad decisions. Right. So if you think about it, like if one decision that you made is more than likely going to lead you to making another bad decision, then was it a good decision to begin with? And the answer is no. Right. And so I think it's very hard for athletes, even they can read all the science. They can read all the research papers. They can listen to all the podcasts where everyone basically says, listen, aerobic work is where is where the gains happen, is where the magic happens, and you should do a lot of it. They still want to hammer it. To me, it's got nothing to do with lack of knowledge and training. It's got nothing to do with lack of being educated. It's all about the ego and the expectation that for some reason people just can't set aside and not bring with them when they hit the pool, when they hit the ride, when they start the run. This is just not have it. I'll never understand, even though you talk about it over and over and over again, the need or the desire for an athlete to have an expectation when the run started, to go through that thought process. I think this is going to go this way, because more than likely it's kind of like being dropped into a brand new town and thinking, you know what, I think this is the best way to get to the store. Never been to a store, don't even know where the store is. You just start marching down a road. You get about half a mile in, 2 miles, and you're like, shit, where the fuck am I? I have no idea where I am. I just expected to go this way and find the store. Then you pull over, you ask a neighbor, hey man, where's the the local Kroger? Oh, it's totally back the other direction. 5 miles. And you're like, shit, made a huge mistake. Right? It's so similar as getting on, especially for the bike, right? In the runs, but most people will find that they feel so much better as the workout goes. But even from just a win, right? Finding the wins, finding the improvement for the engagement in the aerobic work of, you know what, let me just see how things are today. But like I did this personally on Sunday. I got home, I went to the Blues Preds game on Saturday, got up Sunday morning, drove back, did a few things. Hayden had hockey practice, but I skipped it. Allie took him, and I was like, you know what? I had a long ride on the schedule, or excuse me, I had a run on the schedule, but considering the running I did the week before at camp, I was like, you know what? A ride would probably be better. And in fact, I'm kind of craving a ride. So let me do one. Wasn't expecting anything and had no plan, which again, I think is such a great thing, right? Is not having a plan, because then you can just go with the flow. And I hopped on, and inexplicably, right, from 2 travel days, a hockey game, ate pretty good, but I had some fun. And you're just not going to feel great. And I got on the bike. Within about 15 minutes, I had it. It was just one of those days where you were just like, God, I was like, I freaking have it today. This is ridiculous. So my first thought, what do you think is most athletes' thought is? Let's just do it for an hour and 15, and let's just fucking hammer it.
Yeah.
Let's just blow the gasket today. And that was the thought. I think it goes through every athlete. Let me see what I can do today, baby. But then I thought to myself, I've had every workout this week, worked out 6 days, did my 5th ride, only missed Monday because I was traveling back from camp. But if I want to do this, if I want to raise my expectations, or not expectations, I want to raise my percentage of likelihood to continue on this path, right? Because I feel this good for a reason, I think, because I was consistent on my bike, and I was consistent on my bike because I wanted to get on my bike, and I was fresh enough to do it, right? Let me just do this and see what I got. And then but the answer was not to smash myself around 15. My answer was like, you know what? The best thing for you today is to not overdo it and dig a hole for tomorrow, because Mondays are hard. They're hard for everybody. Let me just do zone 2 work and some Ironman type pace work. And I did that for 2 hours. And that was it. As bad as I wanted to smoke it, even after an hour and a half, I was like, all right, after this hour and a half, let's just see what I can do at threshold. And then I got to an hour and a half, and I was like, don't do it. Don't do it. And I held it back. And it was very happy, slept great, high HRV, low resting heart rate on the bike yesterday. I originally had an easy session planned, but felt just remarkably good when I woke up. And then I had a high intensity session to do that was supposed to be scheduled today, but I felt so good that I just swapped days and did it yesterday. You know what? I felt incredible. And I did that, and I felt great. You know why? Because I didn't trash myself the day before for no reason. But I was super happy with the work that I got in because it was beneficial. So I think there's just so, again, like in listening to your body, but also listening to the plan and knowing that, because so many athletes, and you deal with the same things I deal with, and talking about the run program and running 6 days a week, even though, it's a small progression, and you start out, people complaining about running so slow for such little time. To me, it's more about behavioral changes.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I told athletes this. I had a bunch of athletes even like the first 2 weeks, like, hey, is this really like a run protocol you're trying to, do a research paper on, or are you just trying to like behaviorally change us? And I was like, no comment. It's a little bit of both, right? Because it's convincing them, right? Because I had a large group of athletes that made it to where their recovery runs started at 15 or 20 minutes. They were doing 3 times a week, made it all the way up to where those got close to 50 minutes. Now, if I just inserted that, most athletes would find value in that. Oh yeah, I'm gonna go out and run for 50 today. You put in 20, they're like, yeah, it's not worth it. And that's one of my least favorite phrases to hear from an athlete. It's not worth it. Okay. So small details and small improvements aren't worth it to you. Check. Understood. That short swim isn't worth it to me. Okay. Well, when you lose feel for the water and you can't swim or shit on Friday, get back to me. Why do we do these active recovery rides? Why can't I just get on there and hammer it? If you want to get overtrained and not get any better, go for it. Let's see what happens. There's this micro view of going to get hard and having to go as hard as possible whenever you can, because that's the ticket, instead of the recovery and the aerobic. Even at the sprint and the Olympic distance, it's still 97% of an aerobic event. Period. Had a guy did go out and do draft legal racing out in California 2 weeks ago. Insane swimmer, in my opinion, probably would have led the pack out of the water. Just a phenomenal swimmer. We're talking like sub minute 100 swimmer. And we've been battling on and off with foot issues for like the last 2 or 3 years. I don't know that he's ran under 8-minute miles for more than a half mile, period, in the last 3 years. I don't know that. I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. Goes out and they cancel the swim because that's what happens sometimes when it rains in California. They cancel the swim, so it turned into a 1 mile run. 1 mile split, 5:30. 5:30. And then hops on the bike and smashes 290 watts for 30 minutes with easy, right? And it has nothing to do with any magic training, right? But what is magic is when an athlete buys into understanding and knowing that this easy stuff works, and the reason that we can now do this is because we've done it so much and we don't miss time, right? But the thing is, like, every little thing matters, and every decision you make matters. And when you go back to like the decision making process and what's gonna add value and add even more value to the week, I mean, it's almost always do what's planned or go easier, because then now you're increasing the likelihood of doing just as good tomorrow. That's it. That is it. And that is the ticket to, again, the best. We say all the time, the best ability is availability. And if you're available to train, you can be consistent. You can be consistent. You can be great. That's it. It's not about it. It's not about trying to prove how fast you can go on a random Tuesday. A lot of times it just happens. And having a consistent work where you're not obsessing about it. And that's something like, if I could change one thing about all athletes, it would not be their ability. Period. Wouldn't be anything physical. It'd be 100% be mental. Is to get them to never have an expectation about a training session and to just accept it for what it is and be happy with it. That would be my wish for all athletes, to not have I just really expected to have to feel better today. Why have the expectation? Because you're told, and you and I both get this question all the time in race season. What do you think I'm capable of? No clue. I'm not telling you. I mean, I have a clue, and it's usually accurate, but I'm not telling you because it's pointless. It is pointless to say, hey, I think you're capable of this, because now you go out and you think you have to hit that number, right? I think you're capable of a 12-hour Ironman. Well, now if you're feeling great, you might think, oh, I better slow down because coach only thinks I'm good enough for a 12. Or if you're feeling crappy to start, you might think, oh, coach thinks I can do a 12. I better push it, and ruining your day. The same thing goes for 30-minute runs. And that's what I think one of the biggest detractors from loving training is the expectation and not making it fun, right? Like you said about the MMA fighters, is creating longevity, right? It's both a physical and a mental thing, right? To get in the ring and to spar like they used to back in the day, and like I'm sure some still do. It's like a straight up fight, right? Like you're trying to knock the person out, and it's not easy, right? So you have to be totally on. So it's both mentally, emotionally, and physically demanding, right? Versus going in and doing it this player out, which I think is just really awesome. Is now you're going to go in, you're going to have some fun, and you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to feel good when you're done, and you're going to get better. Guess what? They probably want to spar tomorrow because their face isn't going to be beat up. They didn't take a bunch of shots. Their fists might not be whatever it is, like whatever you feel good in the MMA fight, is they're going to feel good, and they're going to be excited to do it again. It's been doing it repetitive, and you can't tell me that being able to spar, right, 3 to 4 to 5 times over a 2-week span is worse for you than doing it once in 2 weeks, but doing it more real life. It's about repetitive. It's been doing it in as many times as you possibly can. That's how we get better. Right? When athletes ask, like, I feel like I want to get better, at this. I'm like, well, you only swim twice a week. So you don't swim 5 days out of the week, and you only swim twice. That's gonna be really, really hard to get a lot better. Same thing with running. Same thing with cycling. But creating that opportunity, it's really hard, especially with age group athletes that want to go hard. And there's so many, they get caught up in, training and racing in these games and stuff that they have online. It's like, they get caught. Sorry, coach, I couldn't help myself today. I guess you could.
Couldn't help myself. Yeah.
That's one of my favorite lines. And
I've heard
it's my favorite lines because I talk about us hating all the time. It's like, I couldn't help it. I'm like, yeah, you could. You just got to think about it for a minute and then make a decision. Like I had this like little mini conversation where we're at run camp. I think it was the marathon day or the half marathon day. And I'm coming up, we're coming out of the famous Winston Churchill, huge steep climb that everyone walks up, and we're coming up, and I walked the whole thing. Then I waited and I walked for a while. Is that a goal for today? Keep it aerobic. I was like, I want to get down aerobic enough to where I can run. I had this whole, a group past me, and I'm the coach, right? Something some coach that would bother. Like, I got to be the fast. I got to be the front. I was like, no, I just do my own thing. And a guy come up, and I was like, and just breathe in so hard. Totally out of his mouth. Might as well just tape your nostrils shut. And I said, dude, you need to slow down. Like, keep it aerobic. You got a long, we're at like barely over, we're at like 1.2 miles. And I'm like, dude, you need to slow down. I'm trying to catch my breath. Well, you can't catch your breath with your anaerobic. That's not how it works. It's like telling yourself you're going to catch your breath on a VO2 interval. It ain't going to happen. Walk it out. Do your thing. Own your time and own your own fitness. And it's one of those things that, again, I think is so hard with so many distractions that athletes have in their training, right? With the ability to compare on Strava, the ability to race people on Zwift, the ability to do, all these things. That's all this racing. And I think to an extent, in certain, opportunities, it's fantastic because it allows for some competition. But for a lot of people, I think it really ruins their trajectory in getting better because they focus solely on being impulsive versus and being reactive. And I think that is not being offensive. That's being on the defensive. And I think in Ironman racing, you have to be on the offensive the whole time. Be the one making the decisions. Make the decision ahead of time. Don't be reactive. Be proactive. And a lot of people think, and I think a lot of athletes think that, I'm being the offensive. No, you're defensive. You're reacting because of someone else. And it's counterproductive to what your goal ultimately is. You're detracting from that. You are on the defensive because you're responding to someone else who has and something else that has nothing to do with your own journey and nothing to do with your fitness and nothing to do with the priority of the day. So in fact, you aren't making any decisions. You're just being reactive to someone else's decision, which is also a great example of what happens on race day, right? are you going to be reactive and go with that group? Right? Or you get mad at the group of, 40 to 50-year-old age group men who pass you flying by, unapologetically in a grotesque drafting line like they usually do. And you try to go with them or pass them or show them to your own demise. Because you're going to go threshold for how, God knows how long, or try to pass them, which you have to do once you start, you get a penalty, to the own detriment of your race. It's just these all little small decisions you have to make in training and in racing. And it's almost never go faster, go harder. It is do your own thing, pull it back, understand where you are. Because to me, the goal of each day and the goal of each session is to do the spirit of the session, to do it as it was, as close to it was intended as possible. That is the win, and that is the goal. And in losing sight of that and trying to take it too seriously and trying to have an expectation, especially for something as simple as a 45-minute run, right, or an hour and a half easy ride, like, because a lot of times what gets in the way is you just make bad decisions based on what you thought you wanted to happen, which ultimately led to your expectations. Now you override or you go too long. When maybe the answer is cutting it short. Period. Right, and so it's just, again, one of the biggest things I think every athlete could work on is just removing that phrase from their vocabulary. I expected things to go better. I just want, I want to be a millionaire tomorrow and not work. That's not true. I love my job, but it's, you like have these, like, you can't, it's not real life. Right. And so when you wake up and remove, like, I want this, or I just really wanted that, or I'd expect this, I'm like, that's just not how it goes. And again, you got to listen to your body and own that. And that is the best skill you can have as an athlete. And you know this, and I know this, the greatest skill you can have as an endurance athlete is to know thyself. Know your body. Yep. Know the warning signs. Am I getting too hot? Am I going too fast? Do I have a niggle popping up here? Do I have it today, or do I not have it today? And then how do I adjust? For me, in my body, in real time, right now, either within this race to do my best to get to the finish line, regardless of my thought of the race might go faster or slower, or how can I, in a way, even though it sounds dramatic, how can I honor how I feel with my body today? And also be able to, increase the likelihood of me doing it again tomorrow. Listen to your body, because the chances are, again, like going back to decision making, one bad decision usually leads to another bad decision, right? You smash yourself on a day where you weren't supposed to. You wake up the next day, you're supposed to have a session, your real hard session. You can't do it, but you get on the bike, and you know what you do? You try anyway, and you hammer your way through it, and you dig even further of a hole. Or you wake up so tired with such crap sleep, then now you're grabbing for 16 Krispy Kreme donuts before you get the day started, then can't understand why your week went to crap. Like this, all these things are connected, and every decision you make leads to a higher or less likely decision you're going to make next. It's either going to increase your percentage chance to make a great decision, or it's going to increase your chance of making a bad decision. And again, that's an overcomplicated version of it for the people who just can't help but think about having a thought or about the expectation what they have for the race or a training session. Get out there, do it, love it, and be happy about the fact that you did it, because that's where you fall in love with the training. And all of a sudden you look back in 3 months, you've only missed 2 days, and you've got a whole lot fitter and a whole lot faster, and you feel so much better.
One of the hardest things for me to understand when I first started in this sport, because I came from, team sports, kind of sprint stuff. And I was thinking to myself, shit, I got to, you got to save energy. How do you even do this? And the negative split mentality thing just didn't make sense to me. It seems like you got to have more energy in the beginning, so go harder and then just hold on or whatever. But what is one of the main principles that we talk about all the time in training is that people go too hard on easy days and they go too easy on hard days. And I think that's interesting, because I wonder sometimes if the psychology of an easy day is like, I can drain this. I'm going to actually show out today. And it's like really getting to the point where you can accept it and sort of find enjoyment from it and a challenge from going easy. And because I've seen a lot of people have bought into this, and sometimes it's those that'll do like 50 days of running straight or whatever, and probably hopefully similar to the run program where there's some real short ones in there. But I've seen them do that, and then maybe see them about 3 months later or whatever, and they are just gliding along, going faster. And it's really interesting to see, because it's like they've bought into that idea and they can just, because, it's all about, I think people want to go faster. Cause you talk about, when you have maybe 1 or 2 swim workouts a week, or you miss a couple bikes or whatever, and then you have one bike to do, your tendency is going to just be to go shred yourself, because you're afraid that, or you think that's probably the best way to get better and faster. Going fast, it makes sense, right? But like we talk about, it's not how fast you go, it's how much or little you slow down.
Mm-hmm.
And that principle is something that I think people can get behind. If they can get behind that and really appreciate that and find enjoyment from, mastering that. I talk about it all the time when I used to drum. It was all about going slow. It isn't like, you have to be able to control yourself when you go faster. And that's what it's all about, is building that repetition, building the form, and building the brain-body connection, and having that ability to hold on. And when I was, every single kid that starts drumming wants to go super fast and play drum solos, but that's not how you get good. I didn't have the patience for that really, but later in my life I started doing it, and I would do it. I would work on this really slow tempo, and that was how I finally got to be okay. I was never great, but I think I think I brought this up before, but Tim Ferriss, the 40-hour body or whatever, in that book, and it's all about like hacks right today, right? And I think that's part of the thing we're fighting. Is that everywhere you look, it's like, well, bad hip, I can fix that in 24 hours, or whatever. And you just lean into it so hard. And anyway, in Ferriss's book, he was talking to some master, guy. I don't know who it was. I can't remember. But the principle was, if we can improve your 10K time over, whatever it was, it was probably like 16 weeks. And all they did was like focus on hard stuff and getting 10K time down. Then you can finish an ultra. And he was going through all these things. And I was just like, okay. It was interesting to kind of see. And he had all these tables and charts and proof and whatever. And then, so he was supposedly going through the training. And then you check back on the website, 6 months later, and he still hadn't done it. And I don't know if he ever did it. But I think this, rush to cutting corners and figuring out the easiest and fastest way to do stuff is just everywhere, when it's really about the, consistency. And for me, it's just like, how many people say, nice and easy run today, felt awesome. I just kind of go back and forth about like, why is it so hard for people to enjoy that? And even if it's like, I don't know, I think you're always having that tendency to speed it up and really hammer something just to prove something to yourself. And it's really, to me, it kind of comes back to confidence. If you can tell, you should be able to tell that you're still as fast. And if you're feeling stronger, strong is the fast, and like Ironman for sure. So it's just, I think we face a lot of challenges. I was thinking too quickly about that one day. It was before my first 70.3 in Muncie. We went out to the track, and we've talked about this, but I still think it's a really great story. You had everybody, we covered our watch, and we ran around the track. We ran 1 mile at a time, and then stopped and kind of refueled, and then went, I don't know if we were taking 30 seconds or a minute or something between. And the next lap was supposed to be just a little bit faster. And that was the plan, to do 13 laps, each one just a little bit faster. And I remember that last, is not laps, but miles. So it would be four laps? Yeah.
Yep.
And that last one. So then I started thinking, okay, but we're doing it without a watch. So it's all by feel. And you had mentioned that earlier, being connected with your body, and it's things like this, man, that just intrigue me so much. And, I think we did pretty good for the most part. And then that last one, and then I started thinking about that last lap, or the last 4 laps, kind of negative splitting the 4 laps too. And then by the last one, I was just really going as hard as I could, but I was, for some weird reason, it felt easiest. Not from an aerobic, but like the running part of it, it felt natural and easy. So I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of patience in that whole day. And I think that there's a huge lesson in there somewhere as far as letting your body.
Me too.
Yeah. Letting your body kind of warm into the whole thing. And because how many people come out too hot in Ironman or 70.3 and then pay the price, so.
Oh yeah. Always paying the piper. It is. I think it's just a great reminder this time of year to, and it's not, it's not a flashy podcast. Go out, go hard. Here are the 10 training sessions to raise your FTP from whatever. It's just, that's not, and even again, like it's, I was listening to, this is slightly off subject, but we can wrap it up here. But it was talking about, going hard and how, most athletes, especially in this time of year, are so obsessed with raising their FTP. And the research paper basically was an analysis of the standard, Coggin FTP test, which was, extensive warm up and then a 5-minute all out and then a breast and then 20-minute all out. And then you take 95% of that, and that gives you FTP. And we've been saying since the very first podcast, 7 years, 8 years ago, how long it was, that I would say 90% of athletes, their FTP is way higher than it should be. So they're overtraining. They're actually doing like high intensity interval training when they should be doing, when they're not, when they think they're doing threshold work, because there's such a huge difference between functional threshold and maximum lactate steady state, which what you should be training. And anyway, the analysis that they did, because they went to the lab and tested the results, was that the majority of people, again, we take the 95% of FTP of going hard and all you want to do is raise that. The majority of people, when they compared that to where their MLSS was, most people should be doing 0.88 to 0.91 instead of the 0.95 for that traditional test. That 5% to 7% is enormous in terms of training, right? Like just for kind of to hear it. Like if I did 280, like you did 20-minute effort for 280 and I did times 0.95, well, now your quote unquote, your threshold's 266. If I did 280 times 0.88, it's 246, 20 watts lower. And anyway, it was like an hour-long podcast listening to it. And it basically said, regardless, it was obviously talking about how incorrect and inaccurate so many of these, so many like the old school FTP tests are, the ramp tests are. And the findings are basically from both the sports scientist and the coach I was listening to was that it's always best to err on the side of easier and less watts to get better than it is to go over and to do more, which is the total opposite of what most age group athletes would say. Do higher, do it more, and do it more often. No. Instead, be able to do more by doing it less and doing the right amount. That's the ticket. Because it is, like, to sum it up, like if you signed up for, if you want a very, very exciting, fast-paced, always changing sport, you picked the wrong one. Because most of the time endurance sports are just incredibly boring with the work you have to do. And a lot of times I get that as what I would consider a compliment. These rides look boring this week. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Like I take that as a huge compliment, because I'm not just giving you shit to keep you entertained. I'm actually giving you what I think you need, which might just be a bunch of aerobic work. And it's again, like it's hard to grasp, but the more you can grasp it, and hopefully the more you can hear it from guys like us about doing the right work and doing the right amount at the right time, and again, having fun doing it. Like there's no fun in being laid out in your bed or on your couch on a Saturday afternoon from 12 to 5 and you can't move. You have to limp to the kitchen to get water because you overdid it. Do you think that was maybe a little bit too much? There's getting your body to adapt to get better, and then there's damaging your body and has to heal itself. Big difference. And we'll probably revisit this in June or July when it gets hotter and people are going longer. But I think it's a great reminder for this time of year as you're gaining fitness and you really want things to get better. If you want to gain fitness, tell your coach, hey, can I sign up for a 5K in 2 weeks? Yeah, get you a proper taper, go out and rip it, or a 10K or a half marathon, or don't even sign up for one. Just say, hey, can I go out and test myself in the next 2 to 3 weeks? And maybe we build in like a taper week and I go out and go hard at it. Go for it. But taper down. Do it realistically, right? Don't just do it on a Wednesday because you want to and your ego needs a little bit of a massaging on that day. Give yourself a break and then make sure you recover afterwards.
That aligns with my gut, man.
I like it. It aligns with mine as well. As always, we love you guys. We appreciate you. Appreciate you listening. Hope you're having a fantastic week. Hope you continue to do so. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. We still have a few spots open for our June Tri-Camp in Nashville and also our Tri-Camp in Madison, Wisconsin. Those are both close to, I think we have 3 spots for Nashville and 3 spots for Wisconsin. So those are filling up fast. Be on the lookout for those. And then if you need anything from Mike, he is available at mike@c26triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
All right, dude.
All right, man. See you.